Well, thank you for being here, Julian,
Well, thank you very much for having me.
on Verdicts Vogue. Cheers.
Cheers.
This is a very special, you are a very special guest to me.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. I want to tell the audience a little bit about yourself. And
Okay. Let's see. I'm a son, right? You met my parents yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a brother. That's something I've been actually trying to focus on a little bit more. And a
An
lawyer.
uncle.
I'm an uncle, but
Uncle.
that kind of goes with the brother. But I really have been thinking about that. We just came back from a family trip where it was my parents, my sister, and I was like, my God, I need to focus more on being a brother to my sister, to my wife's sister, and to her brother. And I hadn't really thought, and then I kind of switched it up. I was like, well, then I included my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and then the nieces and nephews. But I really had thought about that.
And
So
you have one sister, Vanessa,
I do. I have one sister, Vanessa.
and then a niece and a nephew.
Well, I have a bunch. So,
Oh,
well, maybe
yeah.
not a bunch, but let's see. So I have got, my sister has two girls,
Okay.
Sophia and Emma. Emma's also my goddaughter. But I love Sophia and I love Emma too.
Make sure you
Yeah,
add
you
those
gotta
in.
get
It's
right.
important.
It is important. And then my sister, Danielle has a sister, and her sister has a son,
Okay.
and her husband has daughters, and then Danielle has a brother,
Okay.
and her brother has a daughter, Madison. She's like probably the babyest of the group.
Okay. And
In
so-
fact, Myra and Joel have grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
so you're the oldest.
I am the oldest.
I learned that yesterday. And I'm the oldest. And so there's some qualities that the eldest kid always carries. And I think,
Okay.
and I, the rule follower, but headstrong,
Okay.
right? So I kind of see that there's I think we have some similarities. We're different
We
too.
do.
Is Daniela firstborn?
No, Danielle is a middle child.
Oh, wouldn't have guessed that.
And that's why my mom and her get along so well, because my mom is also a middle child.
Yeah. I could, okay. You know what? I would have never pictured your mom or Danielle to be a middle child.
Well, it's
Based on the limited knowledge of your mom, I know Danielle.
you
pretty
do
well.
know, but so you do know Danielle. So Danielle is like, she's got the best of both worlds.
Mhm.
So for a long time she was the baby,
Okay.
and then her brother came along, I don't know, like maybe 9 years afterwards or something. And she's like, but I thought I was
So, I mean, you are, I think, ingrained, like in us, family's a big part of our lives. I know you are an amazing dad
Oh, thank you.
to Avery. I mean, I actually, whenever I do a presentation now, I always put a slide of my kids because I saw that you did that in a presentation about maybe 4 years ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to steal that and I'm going to do that every time.
I'm glad.
I love it. And so, but besides that, your family history is pretty, I think it's pretty impressive because
thank
you
you.
grew up kind of like ranching, right?
So I do have, I think, a very unique kind of background that is not, actually by definition, everyone's kind of, background is unique. But so we're from South Texas, which wasn't really South Texas when it started. It was, I guess, the New World or New Spain. That happened around 1740 that they came. And they have essentially stayed in the same area for now 10 generations
Wow.
with my kids. And we continue to have some of that same land in the family. We still
Really?
ranch. I am a big believer in physical manual labor. I think it teaches you things that your mind, like working with your hands and your body teaches you different things. And they're great things to know.
So tell me, what growing up and having that childhood, how has it impacted how you see the world today or how you see your profession today?
Okay. I think what you had asked, I'm also a lawyer.
Oh, that's right. You're a
yeah,
lawyer.
I think I'm also a lawyer. But so, and that's the profession, right? So,
Well, you're a
We-
fantastic lawyer, by the way.
thank you.
That's,
Thank you. Thank you. I'd kind of thought, like we had talked, how would I do this? So there was that, I've said at different times in my life, all I needed to know about being a lawyer, I learned in junior high.
why do you say that?
Well,
Okay.
so and I'll tell you, but
Okay.
so I've thought about it more recently, and maybe all is too strong of a word, rarely, all and never rarely happen, right? But a lot of what I think I learned
Mm-hmm.
about how to be a lawyer, I probably learned at the ranch.
Okay.
And it's maybe not so much about how to be a lawyer, but how to be a human, right? Um, and if you had asked me kind of that question maybe 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, like it's constantly evolving, like, oh, I didn't really realize I knew that, or I didn't do that. So what is it that you, so one, um, you got to work hard,
Sure.
right? Like that's just,
I mean,
it's a given.
ranching is hard. I went
Yeah.
through a stage where I wanted to move to Montana, and then I realized what it took, and I said no.
No, well, yeah. So um, right, showing up.
Yeah.
These are very simple things that
Sure.
like we take for granted, like showing up and working hard. That probably puts you ahead of 95% of the people.
Well, I mean, I think I consider it to be called grit, right? If
Okay,
you have
fine.
that grit, you show up, even when you're tired, even when you're sick, even when you don't feel like going,
That's right.
you just show up.
You have to show up.
And my grandmother, in Spain, she had farm animals, and she'd have to, they were stuck to the farm because they would have to feed them every day, and you have to clean them, and then you have to go through like the whole process of like I want to say a gananza was it when they prepare them, like they have the season where they slaughter them.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah, there's like a season that they go through, and she was always had to kind of be with that.
you do. It, it's like having a child for all of your life,
Okay.
right? You have to take care of a child, right? Like Avery's already 23, right? She probably doesn't want me to take care of her, right? But if you have animals, they're dependent on you.
Of course.
And it's different than what I would call farming, which
Mhm.
would be like, let's say, growing corn or cotton or even
Mhm.
vegetables. Those don't require necessarily as much hands-on as animals do, right? Animals they need water.
Yeah.
They don't get water, they die. And so there's a little bit more responsibility. You know, one of the other things that like, and again, that I'm thinking, times have kind of changed where we took for granted that a fact was the same thing or synonymous with reality, with the truth, and the way how people communicate now, that's not necessarily what's good happening. So if you're working at the ranch, you have to tell the truth. Is that
Okay.
gate closed?
Oh, okay.
Right? Because if it's not closed, well, the animals get out,
Sure.
right? Did you fix the water? Yes, I fixed the water. Well, if you didn't really fix the water and they don't have water, then the animals die, right? And so that's something else. And I was like, wow, telling the truth was something that I always just took for granted. Showing up, working hard. Some of these what I think were basic skills translate whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a CPA, a teacher, whatever you want to be.
I mean, I think that's a great point that you have there. It also shows that, in a way, it also keeps you humble because you're not afraid to get your hands dirty, right? And
Right.
and once you can appreciate tough work, like and you can take that anywhere.
You can.
Yeah. And so, okay. And so if you could tell you, so because I know, or I heard through a grapevine, I think from you, that if you weren't a lawyer, you wanted to be a rancher.
So,
Is that true?
well, yes.
Okay.
I mean, so um, I thought I wanted to be an architect also. Like I was like, I could have been an architect. Well, my wife would dispute that. My wife's an interior designer.
She's an amazing interior designer.
Thank you. And, but no, so I went to college. So kind of, I think my professional story actually goes back to the Great Depression, earlier than that.
Okay.
So my paternal great grandfather, Julian Gomez 1.
Okay.
I'm Julian Gomez 4.
Oh.
Okay, but I have a middle name, Carlos. That's a different story. But there's Julian Gomez 1, who was named after Juliana Gomez. Then there's Julian Gomez 2, Jr. That's my grandfather,
Okay.
Papo. There's Julian Gomez 3, the third, my father. Then I'm Julian Carlos, but I'm like the fourth Julian. So Julian Gomez 1 was the vice president of the Alice National Bank. He had a really good profession. at that time, if you didn't own the bank, you could not become president. So he had reached kind of, his maximum. The Great Depression hits. My grandfather, Julian Gomez too, is at the University of Texas, and he wants to be a doctor.
Okay.
Okay. My great grandfather, Julian Gomez I, has to bring him back because he can't afford it.
Oh, wow.
Right. My grandfather never goes back to college.
Okay.
If you ask my father, why are you a surgeon? Why were you a doctor? He will absolutely tell you it has nothing to do with his father wanting to be a doctor, and that's just a coincidence.
Well, that's the first thing that popped into my head when you said that, because I know your dad's a doctor, and
Right.
he's telling us about how he wants to go back in and do a surgery, even though he's now retired.
You're right. And so I say there's causation,
Yep.
correlation, and coincidence, right? My dad is saying it's coincidence. I don't know that it's causation, but there's probably some correlation
I would
there.
agree. If I had to take a bet, I would say go
Absolutely.
with the correlation. Absolutely.
That's right. And so I have my dad still has it actually. It's a bottle of scotch still in the box that my grandfather, Julian II, and my dad, Julian III, signed that they're going to open up and drink when my dad becomes a doctor. They don't ever open it up.
Why?
Well, my grandfather just passed away before they did it. Like there's so many things that you plan on doing that you
Sure.
don't, and they didn't. So I signed that same bottle.
Oh, you did?
I signed the same box, my dad and I, and we're supposed to drink it when I graduate from medical school. And so I had thought I wanted to really kind of be a doctor.
Okay.
And why is that? Well, my dad had kind of, again, this goes back to the Great Depression, was however bad of a doctor you were, you would always be able to provide for your family. Right?
Yeah.
So this is a long kind of thing. So I leave college. I'm a commodities trader. I own a bunch of cattle at that time, probably like 5,000 head or something crazy like that, it's a lot of animals.
Yeah. So you were doing both. You were.
I'm not in law school.
But a commodities trader, and you owned cattle.
The cattle, right?
Okay.
But I was a cattle trader
Got it.
in Chicago. So like they were the same kind of thing. The more the business end of cattle. But my dad, so I'm like a rancher, makes a bet, I lose it, and that's how I go to law school.
Oh.
Which I had signed that bottle well before that I was going to graduate like from professional school with my dad. Again, this same mentality is no matter how bad of a lawyer or a doctor I was going to be, I would always be able to provide for my family.
Interesting.
And so I don't know, given my family history, that I ever only would have been able to be a rancher.
Oh. That makes sense.
Yeah, like the security or the scarcity of some of the stuff that mentality has stuck with my family since the Great Depression.
And I think that also, I mean, that has to be partly cultural too. I grew up with my father saying that, education was number one, and it didn't matter if you had no other material possession, no one could take your education away.
I've heard that at home at least 500 times.
And I'm actually telling that to my kids now. So it was instilled in me because my parents couldn't do it, and then now me with the kiddos because I want to see.
Can I have another sip?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I'm teasing.
So I know that your grandfather had a big impact on you.
He did.
Share with me. Tell me what you remember, like your fondest memory of you and your granddad.
Wow.
And I promise we'll talk about the law too.
No, it's like pick your favorite parent, right? So like, I don't know that I can pick my fondest memory of him, but I can go back. I know we were joking around last night that I was the prince, and I was.
Right? I think you are too. You probably are.
My name was the same as theirs. Yeah. I was a boy. That's like I was relatively tough. Like I wasn't, So it worked out really, really well. But what is probably stuck with me, like what's my fondest memory? Like the lessons learned, and there's a lot of lessons. And so you mentioned my daughter, how my daughter wound up she is in every single presentation that I've ever made.
Okay.
How? I cut a deal with her because the first one, she gave me the title for it. Walk fast, talk fast, think fast. Well, where did that come from? That's my grandfather, Papo, my paternal grandfather, Julian too, like trying to teach me. Where did that come from? I'm walking to open up the gate, right? You got to close the gates. You got to open up the gates. You drive so those who haven't been like to a ranch, you're in a dirt road. The cows are on one side of the fence, and there's a gate that lets the truck go through. And then you want to keep them presumably on that side. Why? There's a bunch of reasons why, but you want to keep them on that side.
Okay.
So I get out of the truck and I'm walking to the gate and I open it up, and then you have to push the gate open so that the truck can kind of drive through. And I push it open and I lollygag back, and then I close it and I lollygag back to the truck. And he's like, you got to walk fast, talk fast, think fast. And I was like, what? He's like, look, with everything you do,
That's amazing. I mean,
right?
that's great.
You got to do it, right? You can't be just like lollygally. And so, well, what is that really with everything you do? So like, if you look at our vision statement at the shop, right? It's attention to detail and excellence with everything that we do. And so it was that attention to detail. That was the name of the first speech. Walk fast, talk fast, think fast. I can't remember what it was actually about, but that was kind of, it was actually about being in federal court. But that has stayed with me, like his lessons. And there's just a bunch of them. Work first, play first. Work first, then play. Right? That was something that was easy. That's done it. There's just like there's 1 second of bad luck every day. If you can just get past it, everything will be okay.
That's a good one. Have you said that to yourself during a day? Like
absolutely.
Give me an example.
Okay, so I grew up without the internet or without social media. I'm 51 years old, and growing up, let's say in the 80s or 90s, or even the early 2000s, right, is different than somebody growing up right now. And I believe, so I have a son who's an attorney, and we've had this discussion, what's harder, now or then? I made the argument that it was harder earlier. He thinks it's the other way around. It's like, what's prettier? It's subjective. Doesn't, there's not a correct answer. But I think that social media makes people think that it's just easy.
Well, and there's actually studies done on that it affects your perception. So that facade that people place can cause people to be depressed because they can't keep up, or because it's keeping up. It's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses in your face at all times.
Okay, so when that comes up,
sure,
right? When I have self-doubt, I just need to have a second of that. Once I get through that, I'm done.
Okay.
Right?
I mean, that's a great point.
Right. Like, it's just like, oh my God, I'm not faced with that type of, like I can see it as like, oh, that's not real. That's not real.
Sure.
So it doesn't affect me in the same way, but I have self-doubt just like everybody else does. Right. And so when I had the self-doubt, I just need to get through that. And as soon as it's done, I'm over. Or, I can't accomplish this. I guess that is self-doubt. Or something bad's going to happen. It's just a second. Once you get over it, it's done for the day.
Just keep it going.
Just keep it going.
Yeah. I always say, keep it moving. My daughter, Eva, she tends to get very anxious when something bad's going to happen, where she all of a sudden like crumbles. And I have to just keep going. It's okay. Right. Just move it. Because as soon as you start moving, or you just kind of get past that, or push yourself out of that, out of your comfort zone, things happen. Because I'm a firm believer that people who are in their comfort zone are not gaining. So when you're feeling uncomfortable, that means that you're stepping into the next level of your journey.
Yeah.
So
and I'm not a bodybuilder, right? But like, if you were a bodybuilder, the only way you grow muscles is by stressing them.
Sure.
So it's the same. It's a physical concept then.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point. And going back to the kids, whether it's harder today or harder back then, I think there's equal arguments that it's hard for each one. I just think they have different problems.
Agreed.
I think the problems today with the kids that I'm seeing are more psychological, more emotional, more in and they lack a real big skill when it comes to communicating with people. Where I grew up, I mean, I'm less than, I'm around your age. I'm 44. So I grew up in the same kind of era where I didn't really do video games. I didn't have social media. And, we actually spoke to people and played outside until it got dark. Right. And so, but you don't see that today.
Well, so you've met Yaya now, right? That's my mom. We call her Yaya. So Yaya told me about Avery, or rather, let me back up, that she tells Avery, your generation doesn't know how to communicate. And so I jump in and I was like, it's not that her generation doesn't know how to communicate. It's that your generation doesn't know how to communicate with her generation. And I remember having a high school party at the house, and all these kids are there. Like, I was expecting all this terror, and they're just on their phones talking to each other through the phones instead of doing like what we're doing right now. So it's different.
And no, it's different, but how does that translate? So how does that translate to the next generation of lawyers, the younger lawyers? Because you can't do everything through text. I mean, a lot of the relationships that we have, we create by speaking to people, or creating some type of connection with a potential client, with a potential referral source, or just a colleague that you'll end up working on cases. If you lack that fundamental skill of communicating interpersonally, then how, where do you make it up if it's only through technology? I mean, if it's only through the phone. And you don't have to have the answer.
No. That's really a great question. So I will say something maybe analogously. So I went to Jerry Spence's Trial Lawyers College, very, very young.
Oh, I've always wanted to do that.
In my career, it's 2000 and let's see, 2000, 2001, class of 2002. I got some of my classmates are like beyond, like they're beyond. And one of the things that they espouse is to tell, and you can, if you catch me talking, I do it now subconsciously. You speak when you tell stories in present tense, first person, right? So if you look at my writing, when I write motions, and I still write, I like to write. We're here in New Orleans. I worked at the Fifth Circuit, right? I wrote, stuff for the judges. I like to write. I write now in present tense, first person, when I'm telling a story. So if you look at my complaints and you see the facts, Bob is in his car, right? He's driving down the road, but I'm writing it just the way how you would speak it. And so I think that people can form bonds, maybe not in the same way, because there's physical pheromones and chemistry that's beyond my knowledge that happens. So like you can mirror somebody else in person.
Sure.
Right? You can mirror them to create that type of bond. I think you can do that probably in written word through social media in ways that we still haven't figured out. But I think that telling stories, doing first person, I think it can still be done through text message. It just will be a little different.
Okay. And so what would be advice that you would give a younger attorney who would be watching this, or someone who's finishing law school and thinking about getting into the profession of law?
Do it.
Do it. Okay. But do it well.
Well, just do it. Right. Just get in there and do it. And it's not a question, but it was something I wanted to get out here. And this do it maybe presents something. I read some stuff that there's now this term. I didn't know what it was, and they were called tech bros. I'm like, tech bros? What is a tech bro?
Well, I don't know if I know that term.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Don't. Tell me what it is.
Absolutely. So it's apparently these guys that wear like vests and they work in technology, and they're called tech bros. But it's like all the guys from Silicon Valley types, right?
Okay.
They had a philosophy of fail fast, learn fast. Okay. That comes when you have an abundance of stuff. If you are a young entrepreneur in a small business, right? If you're a young attorney that's doing something that you're just kind of starting out on your own and you've got a boss, maybe failing fast is not the best tactic, right? So when I say do it, I'm not saying do it haphazardly,
Sure.
right? I'm saying do it intentionally with purpose, recognizing that if you screw up a whole bunch, you may not have your job, or if you've gone out on your own, your business may shut down.
Sure.
Right? We do not get venture capital funds when you first start a law firm.
No.
So
No one is telling. Yeah, there is no handbook of how to do it right when you're starting a law firm.
no, and there actually, so I'll come back to my own thing. There's more than one way of achieving success.
It depends how you define success too.
Absolutely.
Sure. How do you define success?
So for me personally, it was the ability to have enough money, right, to be present with my family, and to not to have, like, I guess I guess I actually embodied it all in that sentence, which was I needed enough money to be present for my family. So my daughter was sick for a little bit. I was able to take care of her and pay for the doctors.
Okay.
Right? Is like you did both, and that was kind of what I did at that point in my life. Now I'd like a little bit more money because I don't need to be as present
Sure.
for my kids. My wife would probably like me to be present a little bit more.
Especially when you're skiing.
Especially, yes, it's because I was on a Zoom the other day while I was
I don't
skiing.
even know how you do that.
Well, so the helmet has the little things.
Please share what you were doing while you were on your trip.
I'm on AAJ's executive committee, and they have a meeting every 2 weeks, and we get scored. So no, you do, like, and I love it. I think like if you are a plaintiff's attorney and you are not a member of AAJ, you are wrong. And of your state TLA, you've got to join these organizations.
Absolutely.
Because they are protecting your practice and your clients' access to justice. But part of that meeting, right? They have a meeting every 2 weeks, and you need to be there. You got to listen to what's going on and make sure that you're doing your part. And I had them on there. And so on the chairlift, right? Like if something was happening, I'd like send somebody like, hey, I'm skied. We have to vote on this. You have my proxy. Here's a picture of me if it comes down to it. And it did.
Well, I mean, hey, you got it done. You're balancing, but yeah. And then you put down the phone and then you went on skiing and you guys were fine.
It was fine.
But so then now as you're into this portion of your life where Avery is doing great and she's 23 years old and she has a whole world ahead of her. What's the next chapter for you that you want to see in the next 5 years?
So I pray a bunch. I really do.
And I do too. And
right?
and
so people call it meditate, do it, call it whatever you want to. Like I had a one-way conversation with God, or at least I think it's a one-way conversation. I'm pretty sure it's actually two-way because he's communicating with me in ways that I don't know how, like I don't recognize it. Right. But so I pray for happiness, health, and then the time to kind of enjoy it. And it actually comes from there's a toast in Spanish, right? Pesetas, amor y tiempo para gozarlos, right? Money, love, and time to enjoy it. So but I choose happiness above health, and that's intentional. But I want to stay healthy.
Okay.
Right? I'm healthy. You mentioned skiing, right? That ski trip, my parents, right? My dad's 78. He's fixing to turn 79. My mom is 75. Both of them still ski.
That's amazing. They look so young. They just look so young and so happy. Besides, I think your dad's a little bored right now. But don't tell your mom.
No, my mom really likes the retirement. My dad doesn't know what to do with his time. And they've been together. My dad knew my mom when my mom was inside of his mother-in-law's belly, because my mom's older brother and my dad grew up together and are like best friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
She was telling me she was together for like 50 something
years.
Yeah,
they've been married for almost 55 years.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful.
Thank you. But no, so my parents are healthy, right? So I focus on my health. I'm really concerned I try to eat better, not good, but just better.
I think you eat pretty well.
Oh, thank you.
You do. I've gone out with you enough that I've seen that you guys are on the healthier side. I want to say that I'm on the healthier side, especially now with this, awful gluten-free diet that I have to do.
I know it's like that's tough. The
It's so
gluten-free.
tough. I couldn't
It
eat
is.
anything yesterday.
So yeah, they've told Avery to try gluten-free stuff, and she's like, if gluten was good enough for God, it's good enough for me, right?
Oh my.
I'm just, it's a joke. So
No,
the truth, I mean, I don't know if it's the truth, but presumably, like butter, I know tastes different in the United States than it does in Europe.
oh yeah. Well, I mean, because of Enzo, my son who has autism.
Right.
When we found out he had autism, we started looking at everything and
Sure.
and trying to figure out from the foods, from the medicines, what's right, what's wrong, and every parent has to make their own decision as to what it feels good for them. But we started noticing that the foods are just different, and had been going to Spain for the kiddos, on and off for 10 years of my adulthood. And so I know that the food tastes different and it's fresher and they don't allow the same additives and things here. I don't know how that's possible, but there's things that are allowed here that are not allowed in Europe.
Well, even so, it's not only with the food, it's with the automobiles, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they've got some protections over in Europe that we don't necessarily have over here. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure somebody who's better with like facts or the truth would say, oh no, well, they're missing this and we have it over here. There is disparity, but some of the things I think are probably better, right? Like that. I
Sure.
think the food's probably better.
It's better. I know that a couple of years ago, we did that trial, like that pilot study that we did, and we were looking at the Japanese cars and the difference between cars in America and cars in Japan, and saw how certain technologies were rolled out a lot earlier, even though they had it available here. So, I mean, so yeah. So I don't know the answer to that or why, except good lobbyists.
So I did used to work in Washington, and that was I was the assistant economist for the House Agriculture Committee. That would have been like it was when the contract with America happened and Newt Gingrich took over. I think it was '96, but they called it Freedom to Farm. But my takeaway from that was, if you wanted to accomplish anything in Washington, you hire the best lobbyist you can that is the most connected and give them as big a budget as you can afford. Which, like, you're like, dang, that means that the wealthiest win.
Yeah,
which is scary.
Well, I mean, I think that's why we do what we do, right? We protect those who aren't able to protect themselves, and we always try to stay ahead of what's the next theme, what's coming up next, what do we have to be aware of, what's going to hurt us in the future. I mean, just like the conversation that we were having today, it's eye-opening when you start thinking the trickle-down effect about whether elected judges versus appointed judges and what's the impact that has on our state governments. So I mean, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. So to follow up, like on those judges, if you're having to spend $100 million on a judicial race, that means you can't spend that $100 million on a congressman's race or two state representatives races or a governor's race or a senator's race. Is that resources are finite, just like the fail fast, learn fast. Sure. that is if you have unlimited resources, you can do that. But the reality is most people don't.
Yeah. Well, speaking about resources, you made me think of, and like our theme, like David and Goliath, right? How we as plaintiffs attorneys fight these big companies and how we make a difference and impact those, not just for our clients, but those that come after them.
Absolutely.
And you've made a career out of doing this. I mean, you have. I mean, you've had some amazing results.
Thank you.
And tell me, what's the biggest takeaway or the biggest proud moment that you've had from having to go against these companies? Or what can you share with us?
Sure. So you had asked like what I had learned at the ranch. One of the other lessons that I learned is self-reliance, and that what is seemingly impossible is not. Right. And so I have been told, I don't know that this is true or not, but that like baby elephants, like in a circus, that when they're young, they chain them and they learn that they cannot get away from the chain when they're young, and they really can't. But then once they're older, they put that same chain on them and the elephant doesn't know any better.
Oh,
because they were trained from being little itty bitty. I had the reverse training.
okay.
It was always possible. You could always accomplish it, right? It just took hard work, showing up, perseverance,
Mhm.
and then thinking through and, not only working hard, but working smart. So that would be, right. My very first case was a double fatality with some very horrific personal injuries, and it was an auto products case. And to add like another layer of complexity, it happened in a foreign country,
Oh,
right?
what? How did you do this? That's a big bite to chew for a first case
Well,
right out of the bat.
right out of the bag. I literally I went all the way to the Fifth Circuit. I worked on that case in my apartment. I had blue Ethernet cable on the floor on a desk that I had made myself in college to study on.
Okay.
And why did I, or like in retrospect, why did I think I could do it? It didn't even enter my mind that I couldn't.
That's perfect.
Right.
That's amazing.
It didn't even. And so that mentality had been with me essentially my entire life. And because I thought that way, it's just kind of stuck with me. And I recognize that I've been very blessed because of that, right? Not everyone kind of did that, but that was, that's kind of looping back to what another communication skill, right? What, what I learned, I didn't learn that in law school, right? I learned that as a little kid with my grandfather. I learned that with my dad. I learned that with my mom. I learned that with my grandmothers, right? Those were skills that I learned as a kid. And then I just translated them to what I was doing. And so, well, what was the problem? At that point, I had the skill set, right? I had worked for a second federal judge who happened to be the judge that was the trial judge for the first Ford Explorer Firestone case in the country. And I was the law clerk. So I watched that.
Oh,
and I took that file, and it was paper files back then. It was a giant file. And I just deconstructed that case. So I just, this is how they do it? Well, that's how I'll do it. This is how they do it? Well, then that's how I'll do it. And that case was also an international case. Most people don't know that.
okay.
And so I just I knew I had the skills, right? I had the case. And then so I was just like, and I'll tell you that little part of that story here is a second, was I was supposed to go to work for Barron and Budd. Fred Barron was president of AAJ at the time. Lisa Blue, his wife. Lisa's a phenomenal trial lawyer.
Oh, I just met her.
Yeah, she's stud.
She's so lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, she's stud. Fred was just a giant, right? And
So that was her first husband who passed away. Yes.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I worked for Fred for a little while, and then I had the opportunity with this case, and like, is you going to work for me? And I was like, man, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come to work for you. I'm going to figure out all your tricks, and then I'm probably going to open up my own shop, and I've got this shot at this case. And he's like, I appreciate the honor. And I did some other things, and this probably is not the forum for me to say some of the stuff that I was talking to him, but we got along really, really, really well. Actually, I'll G version it, right? I told him I had a lot of gumption, and that was my best asset and my worst asset. And he told me, he's like, man, I appreciate your honesty. If you ever need financial help with your cases, I'll help you.
Okay. That's a nice offer.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
he's like, let me give you some other advice. Case expenses are not tax deductible. Well, what do you mean they're not tax deductible? I wasn't even thinking about taxes back then.
Okay.
Right. And so
that's a hard lesson.
It is a hard lesson to learn when you got to stroke that first check.
Yep. You made me think of a memory of me crying when I learned about invisible money.
Yeah. Or self-employment taxes, right? This is like the first time you get it. You're like, oh my God, like, why did they, like, I took some business classes. Nobody told me about this, but so I realized, so I had the skills, I had the case, I just needed the money. Right. And so I went and found someone to partner with.
So, okay. So I think that's great advice. And I've done that throughout my career.
Yeah.
When it's something that it's either for lack of resources or lack of comfortableness, it just find someone who can do it better. And then you learn from them. That's how I started.
So right, I've been at this now. Let's see. So I graduated in 2000. The first 2 years I was working for judges. So 2002 to 23 years, right? Is that right? Yeah, 23 years.
23 years. Yep.
23 years. I partner with someone on just about every single case because
Really?
I know that I don't know it all. And somebody who has a different set of eyes and a different life experience looks at the same thing and they're like, hey, let's try this a little bit differently. I'm like, I like that, right?
Okay.
We've got a case that we're working together.
We have two cases.
Okay,
Yeah,
but like,
two cases.
Wade, right?
Oh, yeah.
Today, Wade, I'm on the telephone and some great stuff happened in a case and I'm not going to exactly like let it out. And I was like, oh, we should do 1, 2, 3. And he's like, no, let's do 1, 3, 2. And I was like, oh, that's so smart, right? Because he saw it from a different perspective. We saw the same issue. We both kind of, we had the same steps. I would have ordered them one way. He said, let's order them a different way. And when I looked at it from his perspective, that makes more sense.
You know, and you bring up a great point. It's when you find someone that you can work with well together, it makes it not only makes it more fun, but it also gives you a different perspective on every case. So, and I've done that through, I've, depending on like the specialty, what kind of case it is or so forth, I have no problem saying, hey, do you want to work on this case? And because I'm a big firm believer that you can do better for the client, which is the first and foremost, right? That's your priority. But not only that, but getting a smaller share of a large number is a heck of a lot better than getting a large number of a tiny, like,
okay. So the wealthiest or the most financially successful people and companies are not margin businesses. They're volume businesses, right? And then, how they become wealthy is they get extreme volume and then they ratchet up their margin.
Okay.
Right. And so it is, I've been very fortunate in my career is that I haven't had that much bad outcomes. But if you have a bad outcome and you're an entrepreneur, if you're by yourself and you are small, buckle up. Right?
Sure.
There's a lot of people who do what we do who no longer do what we do because they put all their eggs into one basket.
Absolutely.
And so if I can put my time, money, and expertise into 12 baskets, it's probably better than putting that time and expertise into one basket.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I agree. And I mean, our firms are structured differently because I have the pre-litigation side of my firm and then I have the litigation side of the firm. So we run them differently. We pick, but I know that when I know a case comes in and there's a specialty, I make sure that I vet someone who, if I want to work with someone to help or whatever it may be, and sometimes I just do it because I want to work with someone I haven't worked with before, right? But I know that that's my first thing to set up because I want to be able to not only learn, but also kind of hedge my bet. And that's the other thing they do.
So in you saying that, and it's a bad habit of mine, like I'm like, oh, I want to tell you this or I want to share this, was there's two things that really came to mind. One, when I was a commodities trader in Chicago, there was a man named Bill Sapola who taught me really how to trade. He was a pork belly trader. And he had on his little, they're not desks, but they're called desks, right? It's a trading desk, not a desk, right? Okay. They were standing desks before standing desks were cool, right?
Okay.
He had there, fighting to the death is the dumbest thing you can do. You fight to live another day, right? He had that right there because in commodities trading, it's mark to margin. So if I lose $100,000, I got to pay that person $100,000. Mm-hmm. If I lose 10 million bucks that day, I got to come up with 10 million bucks that day. And so you fight. If you're in a bad trade, you need to get out of the trade.
Sure.
So that you can continue to trade the following day.
Absolutely.
But the other one that came up with working with folks, you were talking like things I learned from my grandfather, right? The 3 A's of success.
Okay, what are
right?
they?
And they are in order, right? Availability, right? If they can't find you, if you're so aloof that you can't talk to somebody, you don't respond to emails or text messages, nobody's going to do business with you. Right? Number 2, amiability, right? Nobody wants to work with an AH. You want to work with somebody who's nice, who's pleasant to be around, right? And my grandfather, if you have those 2, you're fine. If you're available and nice, you're going to do just fine. And then if you have the third one, just a little bit of ability, forget about it.
That's awesome advice.
Right. And so,
awesome. Because in my office, we receive a number of referrals and cases come to my office. And like I said, I share cases often. But one of the things that will cause me not to call that colleague back is if they disappear, they don't answer my calls, my staff can't get a handle on them, they miss a deadline, or then we're picking up the slack. Right at that point, and it only, for me, I know it's bad, but it only takes one time, and that's it. And like I cut it off because I know, unless there's like some reason that they couldn't be there, like they couldn't do it. But I quickly learned, okay, is this someone I want to work with again, or is this someone I don't want to work with?
Well, I hate to use like dating analogies, but they kind of work sometimes.
Because you haven't dated in a long time.
Well, I've not dated in a long time, but some people think they're offensive. It's life. Do you want to be or work with somebody who doesn't like respond back to you? No. Why would I do that? Right. And it's okay.
Do you feel like you're chasing that?
Yes. Like, and it's so, and people like, I have some other people that I know. It's like, I'm trying to make myself more scarce. Give me a break. Oh. Like, who's got time to be playing that mental gymnastics kind of like you don't, and it's okay. Right. Hey, I know that you did. I don't have the answer right now. I need a week to get past this problem. Mm-hmm. And then I'll come back to yours because today it may be the most important thing for you, but we got 3 weeks before that. And I got 2 other hard deadlines between that. And I'll give you the time for it.
And that's all that it takes, just an explanation. But I've had situations where, because then it kind of like dating, right? Where someone starts dropping the ball or starts not answering calls, and then you start feeling like you're doing, it's this is a case that we're working on. Our office is doing all the work, and that resentment, that big R.
Absolutely.
In relationships, but whether it's a dating relationship or a working relationship. And I think that's why I'm like an out. I've always been the person where I call it quits fast and I'm out.
So there's like, it's a survival instinct, right? The deals that you don't get into, right? Or that you exit, right? They never kill you.
True.
They never kill you. You die by staying in something.
That is bad for you.
That's right. And so if you get out of every deal, you never win anything, but you never die getting out of a deal.
Yeah. And that's, it's looking at that, looking at our practice of the business of law, right? Well, it's very different than the practice of law.
Okay.
So that's something, as a business owner, I have learned to separate the two. But the business of law, you have to be very intentional, and you have to be geared by numbers and know your bottom line. Anyone who is, if you're going to run a pre-lit department, you need to know how long it's going to take for a case to resolve pre-lit. You're going to need to know what's the average cost per case. You're going to need to know what's your average marketing dollar per case that comes in, what's your average dollar that comes in that it doesn't get signed, and then how is that funneling, month to month. So I can tell you today, if I was to look back, today's, I don't even know what date is today. Today.
It's not April Fool's Day.
No, it's April.
It's the day after April Fool's.
April 2nd. Okay, so April 2nd, I can tell you 2021, when I went out 2020 is when I was already on my own. I can tell you our numbers from April 20, the same day, April 2nd, 2020. Because one of my biggest pet peeves from my past firm was my previous partner didn't want to know anything about numbers. He was like, no. God provides. I don't want to. And I'm like, how do you run a business that way? So, and it drove me nuts. So finally I was like, I can't. I was, after 10 years, I was like, okay, I think it's time to do it my way.
Well, there's more than one way to San Antonio. There's more than one way to achieve success. That works, I think, for some people. I'm just going to be here and everything's going to come to me. The world is wonderful. That doesn't work for me either.
I'm a planner.
Yes. And so what I think, compartmentalizing, looking at data, basically what that is, it gives us a sense of security that I'm following kind of the rules. These are the steps that I'm supposed to take. And then you're like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Then this is going to work, right? It's almost like a formula.
I think, but that makes sense because
it does.
Because the likelihood of you following all the steps and it doesn't work can happen. But it's more likely that you follow the steps and it does happen.
Absolutely.
So, and same thing as the opposite is the same. It's more, if you're, people get lucky every day, right? So I think people get
Yes.
lucky and they get into places and the universe has a plan for them and they just happen to step into this amazing life. Most of the times, if you are not putting in the work and you are not putting in the effort and you're not putting in that, if you don't have that hunger to do something, whether it's whatever area, you're not going to get there.
Agreed.
So I think that's a big difference. And I also think that translates to what we do because I like fighting for the underdog. I like knowing that I created something when no one else was willing to do it. Um, like, and I'm sure you've had cases this way where, so I have a lot of cases that get referred to us through after other attorneys, turn them down. And so
Right.
and in Arizona, we have this fee sharing thing and so forth. So it's not uncommon to someone refer me a case. And so this person referred me a case that I think 3 or 4 other attorneys had like said no. And it was a hard case. It was like a shooting at a bar that
Right.
happened. And the person had left and the bullet came in. I'm not kidding that we just resolved it for over like 7 figures and some. I know, and no one wanted it. So, so I'm like, and it was just a little bit of work because they couldn't find insurance. So what we did is we hounded the owners and then figured out all of the different people and then put it in. I'm sure that that's happened to you in your career where you're like putting in the work ends up in a great result.
So yeah, again, right? It's following the formula doesn't guarantee the
Mhm.
outcome, but it definitely increases the probability. And I have had multiple cases like that somebody else didn't like it for whatever reason,
Mhm.
and we took it and got great results. Congratulations.
Oh,
Like
thank
that's
you.
um so for me, what I like is I like using, and it's like it's on the website, and I have a horrible website. Um, it just doesn't. It's not how what works for me, right?
Okay.
But um, like my mission statement is basically there, which is I like to use the law to make my clients' lives better after something bad happens, right? And so that is like what you say, fighting like for the underdog. What kind of
Mhm.
motivates you, right? So for me, like I like making people's lives better. That makes me feel professionally fulfilled.
Mhm. Agreed.
Um, and so, and everybody's got to kind of, there's space for everyone. You just got to find where you fit.
Yeah. No, you bring up a good point. I mean, it's basically the same thing that we both like to do, just a little bit. I mean, it's the same. We want to
You
help
get to the
people.
same place. You just
Yeah.
you just get there differently, and that's okay. That was one of the things that I like. I want to make sure that young people understand is that just because I did 1, 2, 3, and maybe I didn't really do 1, 2, 3. That is not how it happened. I did like 1, 7, 2, 24.
Just running
Like
around
there
there.
was no linear line to my life, right? But you, you just do it, right? So
Yeah.
you're like, just
Just do
do
it.
it. And if you do it, you're welcome, Nike. If you do it, it's not guaranteed, but if you do it and you start hound and you're really putting your best effort out at, right? You're not, as my dad, not half-assing it, right? The
Mhm.
assumption is that you're going to give it your all. Eventually, if you're persistent enough, if you stay if you stay at it, you will find success in all ways.
And so now this we talked about your granddad and we talked about his advice and we talked about your career. Now, throughout your life, with besides the best advice, what's the worst advice that you've
Ooh,
received
you know,
that you would want people not to follow or that you can,
okay.
yeah.
So that's a great question, right? So I
I'm
told you
on a roll.
yeah,
It's
you
like
are on a roll. So when I got my first commodities job, I had really planned for the interview. It was like they flew me out to Wichita, Kansas. It's a Cargill subsidiary, and I had all the questions like in my head. They were like do. And so that gumption that I was telling you, I used that first there, and they asked me what your best asset was. I was like, I have gumption, big gumption. That was actually the quote. Um, and they said, well, if that's your best asset, what's your worst? It was like, well, I have big gumption. And I've since kind of used it, but I hadn't thought about like, I thought, what's the best advice, right? And I have some other really good advice that I think I've learned or gotten from other than my grandfather, right? But the worst advice, um, that fail fast, learn fast, at least as of recent, I saw that and I was just like, man, that's giving people like it's good advice if a certain set of circumstances exist for you. Like essentially you have unlimited funds. Somebody's life is not in your hands, right? If you were a heart surgeon, you would not want your heart surgeon operating on you and failing fast and learning fast, right?
Sure.
You would want him to have learned or her to have learned and to succeed fast, right? No failing fast, right? You want like learn on a practice thing.
Yes.
Don't learn on me. And that's like a recent, I was like, yeah, that's great when nobody's really.
Well, there's nothing to lose.
Where there's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
That's just part one with Julian. Trust me, we're just getting started. Join us next time on Verdicts Vogue for the continuation of this incredible conversation.